Since I started making videos for this channel, I've gotten lots of very kind comments and nice DMs about my studio space, which is lovely. I've been doing the home studio thing now for about 15 years, and while mine is far from perfect and sometimes even deliberately wrong, I do feel like maybe I can offer some tips, or at least just kind of throw things out there that I wish I'd learned much sooner. For example, acoustic treatment is more important than gear. If you are spending thousands and thousands of pounds or dollars on gear or equipment or on really nice monitors or on preamps or on compressors, stop and make sure that your room is going to be able to reflect that, pun intended, back at you in a way that is actually going to do that gear justice. There is no point in spending lots of money on nice gear if your room is going to bounce it around and misrepresent that gear to your ears, and you're still going to end up with bad mixes and be sat there wondering why. Trust me. I built these panels in my room. There's one just there behind my head. There it is. There's 5 of them. I built them all for less than £100. They are literally some rock wool foam and some wood from B&Q, which is like the UK equivalent of Home Depot if you're in the States, and some bed sheets of Amazon. They're not perfect. They're not the prettiest things in the world, but they are 1,000 times better than having nothing at all. It doesn't have to cost a bomb, and it is so worth doing. Monitor placement is super important, and because we're in the home studio crowd, we don't have the luxury of just putting them in the best possible place a lot of the time. We have to consider the ergonomics of the space and all sorts of other factors as well. Ideally speaking, you want your monitors firing up or down a room, that is to say kind of lengthways up or down a room. That's to minimize the reflections you're going to get off of that back wall, that is the wall opposite your speakers. This isn't always possible. It's not always the best thing ergonomically in terms of your space and the shape and size and all that sort of stuff, but ideally that is what you want. You want especially if you have rear ported speakers, like for example, like KRKs and Yamaha HS7s and all that sort of stuff are really popular. You want to keep them away from the wall as much as possible. It's why when you watch guys like Fluff or Glenn Frigger or somebody like that, I don't know, their setups are quite often not against the wall. They're kind of further in, and that is so that you don't get, especially on rear ported speakers, if you don't know what rear ported speakers are, it just means basically your monitors fire the bass backwards. If you look on the back of your monitors and it's got kind of a hole in it, that's the port. That's a rear port. It's a rear ported monitor, which means that it's going to fire a lot of bass out of the back end. So what you're going to get, especially if they're too close to the wall, is those bass frequencies are going to bounce off the wall and come straight back at you, and that can cause all kind of phase issues in your low end. It can misrepresent that low end because it can appear louder than perhaps it actually is in the mix. So if you're having troubles with translation, if it sounds really good in your space and the low end sounds great and it's really going in your room, but then you go and listen to it maybe in the car or in your parents' car or on headphones or something, and it sounds really tinny and crap and it doesn't sound like you wanted it to, that's probably why. Bear in mind monitor placement. If that's unavoidable for you, like it is for me, for example, and you can't really have your desk in the middle of your room, look into front ported monitors, because then you can get them slightly closer to the wall. Genelec have a fantastic little, I think it's a PDF, I'll try and link it in the description if I can find it, just a fantastic little PDF guide on how to place your Genelec speakers, but it applies to everything, and it's really good and it just covers off the basics for you, so I'll try and find that and pop it down below. Your studio has to be a place that encourages creativity and fun. There is nothing worse. I'm not talking about decoration yet. I'm talking about just the practicality and ergonomics of using your studio within this space, whatever that space looks like, right? Whether you are a student with a MacBook on your bed and a pair of headphones, or whether maybe you're like me and you've got a really cool wife and you have a room in your house, or maybe you have a whole studio. You see guys on Reddit who have converted their whole basement into a studio setup. Regardless of what that looks like, regardless of what your home studio is and what it looks like to you, it has to be an inspiring place to work. And I don't mean in terms of it has to look really cool and be like, oh wow, we'll get to that in a minute. What I mean is when you plug something in, it needs to work, because there is nothing worse than being really, really in it and really working, and all the creative juices are flowing, which sounds gross, but it's not. And you're working really hard and you're making some really cool stuff and you're really excited. And then you go, oh, do you know what would really, really help is if I had this. And you plug it in and no sound comes out. And then everything has to stop while you spend 45 minutes working out why this audio isn't coming out your patch bay properly, or why this pedal isn't passing signal, or you're not getting your guitar come into your interface, or whatever that may be. So at least from the offset, try and plan through what that cable layout is going to look like. Where are you going to route your cables? What needs to be plugged in all the time? Do you need a patch bay? If you are going to have a patch bay, how are you going to label it? Make sure you do label it. How are you going to lay it out to make sure that everything is as fluid and as easy, as intuitive for you as it can be, so that when the time comes to use your space, it's ready to go, it's good to go, and there's going to be no blockages, no interruptions, nothing in your way, and you can just make music and have fun. Leading on from that, next, if you can decorate, do. Your space should be an inspiring and interesting place to be, not in terms of the practicality and the usability, but in terms of just it makes you want to create and make things, and it's a space that you look forward to being in. And again, for some people, this might be your laptop on your bed at the end of a crappy day. For some people, it might be you have a really cool wife and you have a room in your house and you're allowed to decorate. For some people, it might be you have a whole basement studio that's amazing and totally awesome. Whatever it means for you, whatever a studio means for you, it should be somewhere that you want to be in, somewhere that you want to exist. And this can mean breaking some of those rules that you hear, for example, earlier in this video, like monitor placement. My monitors fire across my room rather than lengthways, because ergonomically, firing lengthways doesn't really make sense for me, and it would kind of cut the room in half, and it would be a pain. My room is laid out in such a way that one of my favorite things to do in the whole world is once every 3 months, I actually get to see my friends, and they come over and they sit on my little sofa that I've got just off camera here, and we have wine or beer and we make music, and they're here all day, and it's brilliant. It's wonderful. We take turns in the kind of driving seat, so to speak, and we get Cubase up and we drink, and everything gets progressively worse and louder, and we're playing guitars and we're writing ridiculous drum parts, and we're experimenting with orchestral sounds and like new plugins and new pedals that we've got. It is my favorite thing to do in the whole world. And this room, while yeah, absolutely, it's geared for filming. I try and make sure that the shots look nice, as I lay them out. But it's also very much designed with that in mind. It's why I have a sofa for multiple people instead of just one. Your space, to the best of your ability, and depending on what it means for you, should be a fun and inspiring, creative place to be, whether it's just for you or whether it's for other people. That is probably the most important thing in this whole video. Screw the rules, make something cool. As a weird kind of addition to that last point, Pavlov yourself, which sounds really weird. If you know the story of Pavlov's dogs, Pavlov was a scientist who discovered that his dogs would salivate not only when food was put in front of them, but when they heard his assistant walking down the hall, because they knew that meant that food was coming. So what I'm saying is, you can use that same principle on people and on yourself to train certain behaviors. So for example, I struggle with writer's block. I struggle with kind of getting inspired and getting that initial spark going. So I deliberately Pavlov myself. And what I've done is I buy these. These are Makers of Wax Goods candles. I believe they're a Californian company. They're really, really good. They burn forever and they smell really nice. And every single time I sit down in my studio to make music or to do something creative, not if I'm just working my day job, but if I am doing something creative, I will light a candle. And what that does is it tells my brain it's time to do the thing. And believe it or not, after a month or two, it actually started to work. Whether it's a scented candle, or I know like a friend of mine burns incense all the time, or maybe it's you switch on a light above your desk, or whatever it is, try it, because it does work. I know it's weird, but it works for me. maybe it'll work for you. Don't be afraid to trash the place. Yeah, okay, you've worked really hard and you've maybe followed all the recommendations in this video and you've built a beautiful space that's perfect for you and it's exactly what your home studio would be in your dreams of dreams. But don't be afraid to trash it. It's part of the job. There's going to be cables everywhere. There's going to be amps and guitars or basses or synthesizers or mic stands or drums and snares or whatever it is that you're doing. The place is going to be a dump. It's a construction site for sound in a weird way. Lean into it, have fun, and tidy it up later. It's going to be a mess, and that's okay. It's part of the process. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for hanging out. Thank you so much for listening to me rant for 15 minutes. I really appreciate it. If you have any tips on home studio building or monitor placement or any of that kind of stuff, or like little ergonomic things, maybe you found a really cool little piece of furniture that helps you store your cables, pop it down below, because I am always looking for that kind of stuff. I'm actually already this week in my head thinking about changing my desk and a bunch of the furniture in here and kind of redecorating slightly. It's always going, it's always wearing. Don't be afraid to change things. I will see you next time. Oh, like and subscribe and share and all of those things as well.